Thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Mark Martin. Today, the nationwide retailer Target is pulling products off the shelves after pushback over a line of products for the gay and transgender communities. We have details. Plus, it's a move leading to unity. Christians who are descendants of Nazis are asking for forgiveness from Holocaust survivors.
We decided to give that call to the nations and to call hundreds of thousands to the streets to raise their voices against anti-Semitism.
We'll have more on this move called the March of Nations. Then later,
something's starting right now.
The live-action film of The Little Mermaid hits theaters today, but there was some backlash in casting a black actress in the leading role.
We live in a society that's ready to jump on anything. I mean, 1.5 million comments against Halle Bailey being the black new Aria.
We'll take a closer look at the film and its historic significance. All these stories and more are coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
We begin with Target in the crosshairs. The nationwide retailer is pulling products off the shelves after pushback over a line of products for the gay and transgender communities. The company's stock dropped 12%, a loss of $9 billion in market value since it kicked off the campaign. Charlene Aaron has more in our top story.
Retail giant Target began advertising gay pride products in early May, including items for trans women. Following intense pushback, the company decided to remove some of the items from stores. This comes as other businesses expand promotions and displays in association with the June Pride Month. From an Adidas ad showcasing a biological male wearing a women's swimsuit, to Target's items featuring slogans like Live, Laugh, Lesbian, and clothing for babies and children, the marketing of pride products abound.
I was shopping at Target yesterday, and this is what I've seen. People always say, don't push your agenda on people. Don't push your beliefs on people. But this ain't pushing your belief on people. They will say, this is just for the adults. This is baby clothes, kids clothes. This agenda is for everybody. Wake up.
Former gay Hollywood set and fashion designer Beckett Cook, now a devout Christian, calls the widespread approval of LGBTQ ideology part of an overall activist strategy. He singles out this book, After the Ball, How America Will Conquer Its Fear and Hatred of Gays in the 90s, as proof of the gay agenda to undermine Christianity and traditional American family values.
We're inundated with TV shows, movies, media, social media. The 90s was really the decade that it really took off with Will and Grace, with Sex and the City had gay characters in it. After decades of that happening and being inundated with that, it's no wonder that the culture is it's been completely normalized in the culture.
Many are pushing back against that normalization. Thousands are now boycotting Target, forcing the chain to remove some pride merchandise from store shelves, and in some locations, moving displays from the front of stores to the back. In a statement Tuesday, the company cited safety concerns, saying, since introducing this year's collection, we've experienced threats impacting our team members' sense of safety and well-being while at work. Given these volatile circumstances, we are making adjustments to our plans, including removing items that have been at the center of the most significant confrontational behavior. Minister Nicole Collins lived as a lesbian for 20 years. She says in a culture that embraces LGBTQ ideals, Christians can make a difference. Today, she runs a Christian clothing line featuring the rainbow.
The Lord literally showed me a vision, and I saw a hand clutching the rainbow in the clouds, and I saw the words inscripted, "Take back the rainbow."
As the battle over this and other issues continue, many stress that violence is never the answer and should be condemned. Collins encourages believers instead pray for the LGBTQ community.
God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. He died for the homosexual, he died for the transgender, but that's why we need to be born again. And so I think that the church just needs to be that pillar. We've got to show love without compromising.
Cook agrees.
Every day during Pride Month, we should all as Christians be praying for people to get saved out of that life, just like God did with me.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Now to the Supreme Court and a decision handed down Thursday weakening the power of the Environmental Protection Agency. And in new opinion, members of the High Court unanimously agreed the Clean Water Act doesn't give the EPA the authority to block homeowners from building a home near a wetland in Idaho. Though the justices were split 5-4 as to why, the ruling holds that the federal government's definition of waters of the United States must be restricted to a water source with a continuous surface connection to major waterways. The deadline is looming as negotiations continue with the debt ceiling. Several reports say that the deal that is taking shape would raise the debt limit for 2 years with some caps on federal spending unrelated to the military or veterans. It would also spare most domestic government programs from significant cuts. Conservatives still want deeper cuts, and the deal could fall through. Well, get ready for a potentially hectic Memorial Day holiday. Millions of Americans are setting out for the long weekend in what travel experts say will be one of the busiest in decades. George Thomas has the details.
Travelers, get ready for one of the busiest Memorial Day weekends in over 2 decades.
A lot of traffic coming in, so I'm glad we're here early.
From LA to New York to Boston and cities in between, drivers all trying to beat the rush ahead of the holiday.
You're not down here by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, then you're going to get stuck in traffic for probably 3 hours or more.
Airports and highways expected to see pre-pandemic levels as millions set off between now and Monday. Some 37 million people expected to drive at least 50 miles from home this weekend, 2 million more than last year this time. AAA predicting long lines and potential disruptions at airports as TSA agents get set to screen more than 10 million flyers over the weekend, a 14% increase since 2022.
All the modes of transportation are close to 2019 or pre-pandemic numbers. The one that is actually bigger than pre-pandemic is air travel.
Airlines facing huge staff shortages and cancellations in recent times will also have their systems tested this weekend.
We're doing everything we can to press airlines to deliver that good service. And if there is an issue, we have your back.
And if you think extending your stay till Tuesday will save you on the traffic headache, think again.
It looks like Tuesday afternoon is starting to become a difficult time where we're going to have higher than normal volume. So many of the folks trying to avoid that crunch are actually too many people with the same idea.
With millions set to hit the sands this weekend, a rise in shark attacks has some beachgoers worried.
Person possibly bit by a shark about the ankle below the calf. They're controlling the bleeding right now.
In Stone Harbor, New Jersey, 15-year-old Maggie Drodowski bit by a shark while surfing earlier this week.
I was in shock. I was under the water, and I tried to shake my leg as hard as I could.
Now recovering at home after suffering no serious injuries. George Thomas, CBN News.
In other news, Attorney General Merrick Garland put the spotlight on a crisis earlier this week. Garland said children and teens under the age of 18 account for almost 1/3 of the FBI's missing persons reports. This year, a 10-week operation called We Will Find You, a national, state, and local effort, resulted in the recovery of 225 children. It's great to hear. Well, coming up, it's the March of Nations, where descendants of Nazis and Nazi sympathizers marching through Jerusalem are showing their support for Israel and creating a new future with the Jewish people. Stay with us. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Against a backdrop of growing anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial, Christians who are descendants of Nazis are asking forgiveness from Holocaust survivors, their descendants, and the Jewish people. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl shows us how this move is leading to unity.
It's so heartwarming to see our city filled with lovers of Jerusalem. Thank you for being here.
Christians from more than 30 nations around the world have gathered in Jerusalem to say from the Holocaust to new life, Shalom, Shalom, Yerushalayim. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
The founders of this march are essentially descendants of Nazis. And, you know, to have human beings coming and saying something so awful happened, we're going to spend our lives trying to correct and compensate for that, and to create a movement like that.
I am from a city in which the university is, where Nazi perpetrators, SS murderers, were educated and trained, and they were responsible for the death of 700,000 Jews, and that's why we started researching the history of our city.
March of Life founder Jobst Bittner says German families usually don't speak about their Nazi past.
We discovered that only once we're willing to actually speak the truth about the past, we'll be able to take responsibility both for the present and the future. And that's why we decided to give that call to the nations and to call hundreds of thousands to the streets to raise their voices against anti-Semitism, the hatred of Jews, and for Israel.
Bittner, like many in the march, has a personal story.
My own father was an officer in the Wehrmacht, the German army, and he was in France and in northern Africa. And as an officer of the Wehrmacht, he shared in that responsibility for the deportation of Jews, for the murder of Jews.
Now he sees their responsibility is to stand with Israel, especially in times of crisis.
Together with our Jewish friends, hand in hand, we want to walk and stand for Israel, and that's our theme, united to be a light.
Many of us found out that our fathers, great-grandfathers, they were Nazis, they were part of the Shoah, they were concentration camp guards, they were part of the Wehrmacht.
Heinz Roy's family shared a mixed past. While his Dutch great-grandmother hid Jews in her home, his German-Austrian great-grandfather took a different path.
Because he was part of the Lutheran church that was not supporting Hitler, so I thought, okay, everything was okay. But then I started to read his diaries and his letters. And what I found out is that he withdrew from his Jewish friends at that time. So he didn't speak up. He just didn't want to have anything to do with that. And that's the problem, because at that time, people who knew better didn't do anything.
The March of Life began as a movement of repentance.
We realized that the same silence towards the Jewish people, it's also in our own hearts. And in 2007, we learned that there were 8 concentration camps around our little town of Tübingen in southern Germany. And there were death marches at the end of the war towards Dachau. And then we had the impression, and actually a word from the Lord to say, why not do a March of Life on these trails of the death march?
They walked 300 kilometers, retracing the steps along those different routes over 3 days.
And we had reconciliation meetings in the middle of it, and beautiful encounters between the descendants of the Nazis and the Holocaust survivors and the descendants of Holocaust survivors.
What they initially saw as a one-time event is now worldwide. Marches have been held in hundreds of cities through 25 countries. In the U.S., it's called the March of Remembrance. Ahead of the Jerusalem event, President Isaac Herzog commended the group for its courage in facing their dark past. He wrote, "Your presence demonstrates unwavering moral support for our nation-state and its people, and the State of Israel welcomes you with open arms."
Well, I know that my grandfathers were part of the army. I don't know much about it, but they were part of the system. I'm happy that I could be a part of this movement, because I know in Germany most people say it's past, it's gone, but that's not true. It's part of our heritage.
I can take a stand for the past, the present and the future with being part of the march.
Global Zionist movement leader Yehuda Glick welcomed the marchers, saying he hopes to see many more visiting and standing with Israel in the future.
Now it's the time to raise the banner of God on the place that he chose in Zion. It's time for the nations, just like we, the Jewish people, took our destiny in our hands and came back home. Now the nations have to stand up for Zion and make sure Zion is a house of prayer for all nations.
In a powerful show of support less than 80 years after the Holocaust, the March of Life sang the Aaronic blessing over the Jewish people and Israel. Julie Stahl, CBN News, Jerusalem.
What a great story. You can see more news from the Middle East on Jerusalem Dateline. It airs tonight at 8:30 Eastern on the CBN News Channel. You can also watch it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Still ahead, some film professors talk about the historical significance of the new live-action film, The Little Mermaid. Stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. This weekend marks the unofficial start of summer and the blockbuster summer box office season. Disney kicks it off today with the long-awaited release of its live-action version of The Little Mermaid starring Halle Bailey. Casting a black actress in the role is historic, but it came with backlash from some longtime Disney fans. Ephraim Graham takes a deep dive into the debate.
Wish I could part of that world.
It's been about 8 months since fans got that glimpse of Halle Bailey as Ariel in that very first video teasing the highly anticipated live-action remake of The Little Mermaid. Bailey is now only the second black actor to play a Disney princess on the silver screen, following Anika Noni Rose, who voiced the role of Tiana in the animated film The Princess and the Frog in 2009.
Sebastian, if you had just seen it up there, the ship rode on the wind and they filled the sky with fire.
Okay, listen to me. The human world is a mess.
This role is a dream come true for Bailey.
I literally do not understand how this is all happening. It's just giving me chills thinking about it. I'm just so excited for people to see The Little Mermaid. Ariel has drive and passion and gumption.
Disney's casting choice saw cheers and jeers from fans, many questioning if a black woman could play a fictional redheaded princess. We saw the hashtag #NotMyAriel trending online, alongside splashes of protesting posts, some even pointing to science to explain their opposition. Like this one that says mermaids are white because they live so deep underwater, sunlight hardly reaches them, thus the lack of melanin.
Film is a major part of mass media, and it has an impact on everything.
Film and media professor Dr. Kathy Jackson followed the casting backlash.
I'm like, why are they going on and on about this character who doesn't even exist in real life? But we live in a society that's ready to jump on anything. I mean, 1.5 million comments against Halle Bailey being the black new Ariel. Really?
It's that many?
It was that many until they just cut off the comments.
The arguments and comments that I read were, she doesn't look like the Ariel we know from the start of it.
When people protest about things, either, especially when it's representation of people of color, they either say it's historically inaccurate or that's not the way I remember. And that's what's really driving this, that she isn't red-haired, blue-eyed, is not the 1989 Ariel that they remember, and so they want to reject her. That's what they say, but really what's behind it is that the image is black. We don't really want a black woman portraying our icons.
I want to be where the people are.
Does it really matter that the star of this live-action Disney movie is an African-American?
I agree. I think wholeheartedly for various
Rel
reasons.
Dowdell is a screenwriter, filmmaker, and professor.
Little Mermaid is based on a short story by Hans Christian Andersen, which was not written for an African-American in that role. But I think that if you look at the Disney timeline of African Americans. You look at Dumbo, you had characters in there that were crows that were stereotypical. You look at the Jungle Book, they had monkeys in there, stereotypical. But I look at it like this, there's always room for evolution. So I think for Disney to say, we're not going to make Halle Bailey, who is a brown-skinned young lady, to be in this titular role of that, I think it is boundlessly impactful because a lot of young black girls will see that with their parents, brothers and sisters, and they'll say, I see myself. Disney makes some of the biggest films in the world, biggest budgets in the world. I think the impact of that is beyond consequential because it'll impact people's morale for the positive.
She's like me! Oh. She's black!
The impact played out in these viral videos when children saw Halle as Ariel for the very first time.
in my heart, my 5-year-old little self. If she could have seen me now, I think she would just be blown away.
I don't know when, I don't know how, but I know something's starting right now.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News.
Coming up, see a test flight moving the world one step closer to commercial space travel. Stay with us.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.
It's a giant leap for mankind, or at least those who want to visit space. Yesterday, a test flight took the next step toward commercial space travel. Virgin Galactic successfully flew its reusable space plane for the first time in 2 years. Unlike a rocket takeoff, Virgin's Unity 25 ship launches from a carrier plane already soaring at least 40,000 feet in the air. Unity 25 took a crew of 8 to suborbital space and back. From takeoff to landing, the trip took just over an hour and 15 minutes, marking the final test flight before the out-of-this-world trip becomes commercially available. Wow, just like the movies. That's going to do it for this edition of CBN NewsWatch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. Or you can talk to us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great Memorial Day weekend.